Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my podcast. This is John Bishop with John Bishop Fine Art, and you're listening to Conversations with Freelance Creatives. Welcome back. Hope you're having a great week. I know we have. Last week we were heading to the studio, and all of a sudden we got word that there was a big event going on that kind of closed down the studios. So we just said, you know what, screw this. We just turned the car around and we drove out into the country and saw the wildflowers and ended up in Brenham, Texas, and enjoyed the lovely day there. And there's places full of little curio shops and art galleries. We checked out the art galleries. We visited with some of the local artists, enjoyed the public art that they have. They have a lot of murals in town. It's just a lovely, lovely day out. And we haven't been anywhere for so long because of the pandemic. So it was a lovely day out and kind of a mini vacation that we took. But of course, we took lots of notes and tried to get some ideas of what is being sold in the galleries, what kind of crowds are out, and people seem to be out and about, still wearing masks, which I was delighted to see. But it was a lovely day, and we certainly found that people were starting to show up at the studio in Houston again, so that's always great. Listen, there's something weird about this particular week's podcast. Normally, we publish our podcast just as an audio file on Buzzsprout, and then Buzzsprout distributes it around to the various platforms that take podcasts. But we had something really weird happen. Apparently, the last episode that we did, the audio file, not the video file, but not the audio on the video file, but the audio file itself that was separate to go off to Buzzsprout, had a tremendous amount of dead air at the end of it. So instead of being a 20 to 30 minute podcast, it was a couple of hours long. Well, when we uploaded it, it blew away all of our time on Buzzsprout. So we can't upload anymore until the end of the month, which is, of course, next week. So we can't upload an audio podcast this week unless we go and change our pay structure. So I just wanted you to know that, yes, we're still doing this podcast this week, but it's only going to appear on YouTube as a video podcast and won't exist as an audio until we can get our time back. So apologize for that. If that's the worst thing that we've done, we're doing pretty good. I wanted to talk too that we actually finished our art lab. I'm in a particular residency program out of Mexico City called Proyectos de Residencia, and Michael Swank runs that program. He has a gallery in Mexico City, and he runs this online, it's online now. He runs a residency program that has now had to just go virtual because of the pandemic. So we had an art lab project where the artists in residency all got together and we worked for 10 weeks to create something. And I worked on 4 large pieces that were going to supplement the series that I'm doing called Dreamland. And I finished my project this last week. So I met with Michael. It's not going to go on to the exhibition or to the artsy exhibition, online exhibition from the program. But that really wasn't my goal. My goal was to see if I could, on a time frame, create a project and finish it. And I did, and I like the results. And the funny thing that happened is that at the same time, we have a new exhibition space that has opened up where I have my studios in Silver Street Studios in Houston. And I got word that we could sign up for solo shows in that new exhibition space. And I just got word this week that I have landed July, which is only 3 months away. And so it just so happens that as I finish those 4 large corner pieces, kind of grounding pieces for that exhibition, I now have virtually enough to go ahead and do my solo show on that theme. We'll see if I decide to do it on that theme, but it's all worked out really, really well, because as soon as I got word that I had an exhibition, I actually have something to show. So that was very fortunate. We also, being part of this lovely studio structure, I mean, there's 60 artists just in our building, and there's 6 different buildings. It's around 400 artists total. But in our building, we have 60 artists, and we have opportunities throughout the year to exhibit in the hallways of our big warehouse complex. And we've just started a new exhibition this week. It's called Artists of Silver Street, and we have now put out, we did the hang this week, so all the art is up. It actually kicked off just 2 days ago, and so that exhibition will be up until May. So actually the studio space creates a lot of opportunities to get your work out there. Every time we've had a show, an exhibition since I've been in this building, every single time I've sold something from the show. Maybe just one, but I've sold something in every one. So that's a good feeling. So we're lucky to be able to do that one. My solo show will be coming up, as I say, in 3 months, and I have a lot of work to do, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that as I get closer. I have this series. We'll see if I use it. Maybe I'll go with something different. Because what has happened is, as soon as I finished my art lab project, which was a 10-week program, as soon as I finished that, I had this wave of creativity. I have been painting up a storm all week long since I finished the project. And I think it's because I had to approach that project in a way that I don't usually approach projects. I was very, very organized. I did all the planning ahead of time. I knew what I was going to paint. I kind of knew how I was going to paint it. I'm following a particular pattern because I want these pieces to go with the other pieces in that series. So there's some prescription involved. And I don't usually work that way. I like to be kind of bohemian and free, and I just kind of paint what I'm feeling. And I wasn't able to do that. I mean, I was able to do it, but it was over a longer period of time. And I don't know if you've ever worked on big pieces. You reach a point in the process where it stops being fun and it's just work. And so that is toward the end of the process, when it's just about getting, I need to go back and do this. I need to go and put light in their eye. And I don't need to finish off the corner of that chair. And it's just a bunch of work. So that is less fun, though it's more rewarding at the end. And so I'm now back into the fun part. I just go and I've been creating like mad, doing very, very kind of bold, abstract pieces that are splatter paint and color and movement, which is really what I enjoy doing. So we'll see. I've done two large paintings that are of that style, and I'll see. I haven't even stretched them yet. They're just on loose canvas, but I'll have to see how I want to present them and whether or not they'll sell. I mean, I've got a lot coming up this month. We've got our regular open day on second Saturday, and we have in our building, we're also open every third Saturday. But this next month, we have on the fourth Saturday our biennial celebration. So twice a year, all of the artists in all of the buildings around Sawyer Yard's campus open for an evening event, and we call it the biennial. Historically, these have been really, really big events. My first one at Silver Street, I think I had maybe 800 people come through my studio in one evening in 4 or 5 hours. It's almost frightening. I mean, you're a little afraid of theft, and it's just too many people. And a lot of people sell a lot of work on those evenings. Then COVID came along, and of course it all dried up, and we weren't able to do much of anything for a year. So it's going to be interesting to see who comes back to this big event that's coming up next month. But again, I'll keep you informed on what's going on. It's funny because really I'm just now getting to the meat of why it is, what this podcast is about, our theme for the week. And our theme for the week is record keeping. And one of the problems I had in doing an audio file, of course, Buzzsprout fixed that for me. I don't have to do an audio file. But to try and present a presentation on record keeping just with audio seemed to me to be problematic. Record keeping is incredibly important, and anybody who's running a small business knows that whether you like it or not, you have to keep very, very detailed records of your income, of your expenditures, of your anything that you want to deduct or to claim on your income taxes. You have to keep up with your sales tax, and if Lord knows if you had any payroll to do, which I don't have any employees, but there's a tremendous amount of paperwork that goes into running a small business, and that's all for good reason. I'm not complaining. The problem is that you can spend so much time doing your record keeping that you kind of infringes upon your ability to do your creative work. Luckily, there are two of us in our business, so I am the one saddled with doing all of the paperwork and all of the record keeping, and that frees up Bogdan to do a little bit more creative work. So that's good for him, great, not great for me, but hey, we're a team, and the business is about both of us, not just me. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my strategies with doing record keeping, because I know that whenever I have conversations with creatives, that tends to be a sticking point. People get this kind of frightened look in their eyes when you start to talk about record keeping, because no one explains it. No one really tells you what you should be doing. There are probably many people who know. You may be one of them. But it's not innate, right? We are not trained as record keepers or as bookkeepers or as accountants. That's not our background generally. You may be, but not I. And so that makes it a little frightening for us, because, you just kind of make it up as you go along and hope that you're doing it right. But over time, you kind of get into the groove, and it's not as frightening as it seemed when I first started. Now, of course, I've been doing this for several years now, and I made all the wrong moves. I made lots of mistakes. But coming from a background of librarianship, I had a real commitment and a real understanding of the importance of staying organized. So I think that what I've done over the last, 5-6 years, is create a system that works fairly well for me. And I'm happy to share that with you. I have a template. If you'd like to receive a template of my spreadsheet on how I organize all of that, I'm happy to share it. If you just go to my website, johnbishopfineart.com, and there's a tab there called Giveaway. Give me your name and email, and I'll send you the file. Do with it whatever you choose. I just know that it's not saying that my system's better than yours, but I know that when I was starting out, if I had some sort of suggested template, it would have helped me a lot. So I'm offering that if anyone's interested. But the way I try and organize all of my records, I keep things into 3 categories. One is the business stuff. And all of the business stuff is all of the filings with the government, all of the numbers they give back, the tax ID numbers and the sales tax receipt, the registration, the business license stuff, all of the incorporation papers for creating our LLC. All of that paperwork I keep in a separate place in the file cabinet, and I code everything. I give everything a number. And so those files that have to do with the business itself are evergreen. I never get rid of them. I just save them because they are kind of the legal history of the company. I also keep in there minutes from meetings, and I keep those pretty much indefinitely as well. I got that tip when I first started. I read it somewhere, and then a colleague talked to me about it as well. If you are ever challenged legally, one of the first things that people will try and do, particularly if you have an LLC, is they'll try and say that there really isn't a business involved. This is just a hobby. We're not making big bucks like other businesses maybe. And so whoever's suing you might accuse that really there is no separation between you and your business. This is just a hobby. And so they'll try and go after your personal assets as well as your business assets. That would be bad. And one of the ways to prove that you are a legitimate business and not just a hobbyist is that you have regular meetings and keep minutes. And so we do that. We do that. We haven't been so great since the coronavirus, but we have generally been very, very good about having regular meetings. We take some minutes, maybe we go out to lunch and put that on the business as well. But we create a record that we are meeting regularly and taking minutes. And so that would be another record that I keep because it will give me some sort of proof if I ever need it, if that's ever in question. In addition to the business files, I have customer files and I have expenses. My customer files I treat a little bit differently. I give each customer a number, a code, and I file anything to do with that customer in that folder. And I keep that for a year. And I change it out every year. What I do differently with the customer files is I also keep a project number associated with every job that we do. And so I can track in my spreadsheet, I can track who I've done business with, and I can track which projects have I been involved with. And those two things can go together and I can track them separately. And the reason I want to track projects separately is because they are very often expenses that have to do with projects that aren't normal record won't show up in any other kind of record keeping. And so if I say I'm doing a project with Mary Smith and she wants me to take photos of her new condominium. So I take photos of that condominium and she may want some to be printed and she may want some things to be shipped, and there may be gasoline charges. Those different expenses are coded with that project number. So not only do I have that information in Mary's file that I did that work, but I can also track my mileage. I can also track my expenses for postage and the other expenses that come up from that project. My third group is just my expense file. And so every vendor, every expense that I have has a code as well. So if I have a telephone charge, if I have internet fees, if I have a subscription to Adobe Suite, if I have whatever expenses I may have, rent, things like that. Each one of those has a file numbered, and as I pay those bills, I enter them into those files. I keep those in the file for a year. At the end of the year, I take all of my customer files and I take all of my expense files, and they're in order because they are all filed individually under their code. I staple them together, or if it's too many small receipts, I'll throw them in an envelope and label it. And I take all of those and I put them into a box. Last year's obviously is 2020. They're all in a plastic box, and I'll keep that box for 3 years. The reason I keep it for 3 years, I think the IRS suggests 5 or 7, I don't recall. My accountant told me to keep things for 3 years. Apparently, if you are audited, if you have records that go back 20 years, the IRS can audit all of those files for those 20 years. If you only have 3, which is, I believe, according to my accountant, please check that, she says that you're only required to do 3 years, and then that's all they've got to check. So there is some rationale to not keeping records that you don't need to keep. It may help you in the long run. And so the real gist of this is that keeping those kinds of records is exceedingly important. I knew a friend back in the 80s when I was first wanting to kind of play with the idea of opening my own business. and she ran a flower shop. And she took all of her receipts. At the end of the day, she did her cash register receipts, and she had all of her expenses, all her bills, she kept every piece of paper that she was required to keep for accounting purposes. And she threw them into a large metal trash can that she kept at the top of the stairs in her shop. And when I asked her what she was doing with that, she said, well, I'm required to keep records by the government, but there are no specifics. They don't tell you how to keep records. That's your business. And so what she figured was that if she just threw all of these pieces of paper into a big trash can, and she were to be audited, the auditors would have to piece through every piece of paper in that garbage can and try and make sense of it. Now, I can't quite tell you what her rationale was. It seemed to me that she was hoping that inconveniencing them to that degree that perhaps they would give up and leave. I can't imagine that would work. But I can't possibly live with that kind of disorder in my record keeping. I need to know things about my business that aren't even reflected by the accountant, my bookkeepers that I hire. They put things into big, broad categories like learning or expenses. I need to know more than that. I need to know how much am I spending on art supplies. Because as I think I mentioned before, when we started this phase of our business, moving just from the video and photography into fine art, our budget, our expenses for supplies went up 700%. That's a really expensive proposition. That's not reflected in the numbers I get back from my accountants. So keeping these levels of detailed records really, really helps me in running my business. It gives me a better overview of what's going on. It allows me to be much more evaluative in making plans for the future. When I'm planning my goals and objectives for the following year, I know what kind of red flags have been raised and where we might need to make adjustments. It's just so much better, and it's not that difficult. This spreadsheet that I mentioned, I keep I enter all of the things that I put in the file cabinet. I make a note of where those things are filed, which number of file it is, so that I can organize all of that. And I can tell you specifically when I recently got a call from my accountant saying there was this deposit, we don't see it. I was able to go back and find out where that deposit was and when it was deposited. And found out the problem was because a fee had been taken out and that wasn't reflected. The deposit didn't match the invoice. So I was able to fix that. But I was able to go through that rather than just pouring through stacks and stacks of paper. Much, much better system. Whatever system you do use, you need to keep yourself organized. It will save you time, it will save you a tremendous amount of headache, and it will help you build your business stronger. One of the things we've done, in addition to the weekly podcast, I also have a video, a vlog every week, and I do a written blog every week, as well as this podcast, and a video and an audio podcast. Bogdan and I have started doing what we call Art Chat with John and Bogdan. It's a weekly live program that we do on Zoom, and we discuss particular pieces of art that we want to promote. It's all part of our marketing plan that we need to get out there more, and I do these programs about running an art business, but that doesn't sell art, right? Because the people who are buying art are not interested in how to run an art business. So we're really trying to promote and get comfortable with being in front of the camera, discussing our art, what it means to us, the breadth of our work, what kind of scope we have in the production that we have, And it helps us to get better and better at feeling good in front of the camera, talking about art. And that hopefully will interest buyers and our collectors and even our friends. So if you're interested in looking at that, that comes out every Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Central Time here in the U.S. And it's only a half an hour program from 11 to 11:30. And it's on Zoom. If you need the login information, I'll put it in the description below. In addition to that live program, we record, so then we make that available on YouTube afterwards if anyone, so that it's got a little more life to it than just that 30-minute live show. So if you're interested, take a look at that too, something we're proud of and working hard on. So other than that, have a great week. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're enjoying the slowdown of the coronavirus. Hopefully we're not going to get another wave before people get vaccinated. Have a wonderful week. Stay creative, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks so much. Bye now.